If you've been put off from growing clematis in your garden because of their reputation for sometimes being difficult, you love Viticellas. They're tough, reliable, unfussy. They come up year after year, and all you do is to prune them in February down to virtual ground level, or a foot, 6 inches, and they'll flower again on the growth they produced that year. In the words of my friend Richard Hodgson, who has the national collection of them, and he lives in Lancashire, these plants are bomb-proof. And in this video, I want to introduce you to the idea of how you can grow Viticellas in your garden to extend the range of colour well into autumn. Viticellas originate from southern Europe, the Caucasus, northern Turkey and northwest Iran. They're to be found growing in bushy places like old banks, old walls and abandoned cultivated land. The word Viticella means small vine. We know from history books that they've been grown in the United Kingdom since Elizabethan times, and we also know that Viticellas featured in medicines and potions used by the Greeks and Romans, so it's likely that they date back in this country even further. They grow up to 4 metres depending on the variety, and they come in a range of colours from white, pink, reds, blues and purples, but there are no yellow Viticellas. The natural flower shape is a nodding bell, but through breeding with other clematis there's a wide range of flower shapes and sizes. Their flowering period is from late June until late September. In winter they go dormant and they flower next year on new growth produced that year. Hard pruning in spring therefore keeps the plants from going woody and flowering on new growth produced near the top of last year's plant. Not all Viticella varieties flower at the same time, and so it's possible to extend the period of flower by planting different varieties of Viticellas in your garden. Weather and location also play a part in determining flowering periods. This is a species Viticella, which means that it hasn't been crossed with anything. It arrived here through vegetative cuttings only, rather than being crossed and producing seed. And we're going to look at a range of Viticellas today that are all hybrids. They're a cross between two parents. The flower in the middle is Madame Julie Correvon, and she was bred in France by Francisque Morel in about 1900. And we do know the parentage of Madame Julie Correvon. The one on the right as you're looking at it is Viticella rubra, and the original parent was Rubra grandiflora, which I don't think exists anymore, but rubra must be very close to that parentage. Viticella rubra grandiflora is mentioned in this book. Published in 1872, it's called The Clematis as a Garden Flower, and it was written by Thomas Moore and the George Jackman. It has some fabulous colour plates in here, including one of that Viticella. And if I bring it closer towards the camera, you will be able to see how similar it is to the modern day Viticella rubra, although the anthers are a slightly different colour. This is a wonderful book. If you ever get a chance to acquire one, I suggest you do so. Although unless you buy a very battered one like this, you might pay quite a lot of money. The one on the other side is Ville de Lyon. So you can see from the varieties of the textures and the colours where Madame Julie Correvon came from. The flower would normally be larger, but it's towards the end of the season, and these are the last few flowers on the clematis that I have of her. This is Little Bass. It's a very typical Viticella shaped flower, and it was bred by Wim Snoger in Holland in 2000. And we only know one of the parents, and that's Minuet alongside it. It's a particularly beautiful clematis that hangs down in a typical Viticella manner. This is Purpurea plena elegans, and it was bred by Francisque Morel in France in 1900. I've included it, even though we don't know either parent, because it's unusual. It's a double, and there are not many double Viticellas. Mary Habley is one, and Mary Rose is another, but that's a particularly unusual flower form. And finally, this is Richard's Picotee. It's a cross. We don't know one of the parents, but the other parent is Catherine Chapman. I thought I had a Catherine Chapman, but I couldn't find it, so I either need to look harder or have another trip to a garden centre or contact Richard to see if he has one. But that again is another typical Viticella flower shape, because in outside that would be hanging down. Beautiful little flower. Because of their nature as climbers and scramblers, Viticellas are very useful for climbing up man-made structures such as this archway, or growing over a shrub or up a tree. If you want to grow a clematis up a tree, for example, plant it away from the tree and angle it in with a cane, because the soil immediately under the tree will be too dry and the Viticella will not be able to compete with the amount of moisture that the tree uses. When you choose a Viticella, like any clematis, you need to make sure that what you're buying is a healthy plant. It needs to have more than one stem, otherwise it's going to be a very weedy plant. This has 4 or 5 and is growing away nicely. I normally check the roots, because you want to make sure there's a decent root ball. When you plant it, you tease out the roots a little bit to make sure that they don't continue going round in circles. Unlike other clematis, where people will advise you to plant them 6 inches or even more below the level they were in the pot, you don't have to do that with Viticellas. If this is your soil level, dig a hole slightly larger so that you can put some nice compost around them. Feed them with bone meal or blood fish and bone just to give them a good start, and then plant them same depth as they were in the pot. Water them thoroughly before you plant them and then immediately afterwards. And remember to water them for the first few weeks. Now, how much you water is debatable. There is an argument to say that if you water any plant too much, the roots have no reason to search out looking for water, because they're getting everything provided there. On the other hand, if they're not watered enough, the roots will not be able to provide the plant with the nutrients from the soil that are carried in water, and the plant won't thrive. In terms of feeding, there's a debate about that as well. I know somebody who grows a lot of Viticellas, and he says he never feeds them at all, because they grow in the wild, in scrubby places, and they're not fed and they thrive there, so why not in his garden? And indeed they do thrive. I know somebody else who used to have that philosophy, but started feeding them and has noticed that he gets more flowers. So it's a matter for you, but these are very unfussy plants. Not all clematis grow to 4 metres. This is one called Buckland Pixie, and although it's coming to the end of its flowering period, you can see the flowers are very small, the plant is quite compact, and it's in a small pot. I have a number of Viticellas that look good on the patio, and I just move them off when they're reaching the stage of finishing their flowering. So that's Clematis Viticellas. If you fancy having an extended period of flower in your garden in the autumn, and you don't want to have plants that are fussy and require a lot of attention, I can't recommend anything more highly than a Viticella. It will do its own thing, it will scramble, it'll provide lots of colour, and if you buy different varieties, they will flower for different periods between July and September, and you really will have a wow factor in your garden throughout that period of time. Stay safe and see you soon.